Hey folks, thanks for being here. I've got this is one of the best shows I've ever. This is gonna have so much news, important news crammed in your head. You're gonna be spitting up. It's like regurgitating little extra pieces of news. It's gonna be a little gross, but you'll appreciate it. I mean, for one thing, I'm gonna be reading, and it's a tough letter to read, but it needs to be done. A letter, handwritten letter from the guy in prison for leaking Vault 7, the largest internal CIA leak ever that revealed so many of the crimes and the tools that our CIA uses. And that letter is hard to hear, but again, it needs to be reported on. So I'm going to be going through that. I'm going to be talking about evidence, the numbers, the breakdown of how exactly the U.S. grabs, steals, whatever you want to call it, most of the world's profits on in a bunch of different industries, while other countries struggle to feed their people, take care of their people. The U.S. is just sucking all of the profits around the globe. That continues to this day, even though the U.S. empire is not to the level of it used to be, the level that it used to be in terms of maybe extraction of the world's profits and resources, but that very much continues today. And so I'm going to get into that and what it means for your average American as well. I'm going to be getting into German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Sorry, got a bit of a cold. Angela Merkel has admitted that I'll tell you in a few minutes, but admitted something about Ukraine that is it really is a game changer, it's I mean, it should change even people that have stood by the fucking liberal lie, the propaganda about Ukraine, the proxy war going on there. This admission should change their view as to what's going on there, even if you stuck by it till now. I'm going to get into that. Yeah, just so much important stuff. Oh, yeah, new U.S. announcement about our military in Australia. But all right, so that's a quick rundown of and more. But let's just dive in here. I say that at the beginning of every show, like I don't always just dive in. I mean, so I don't know. It doesn't need to be said. It's one of those things. It's like when someone asks you how you're doing and you realize and that you turns out they don't really want to know how you're doing. It was like, oh, I just say how you're doing. I don't mean how are you doing. I don't give a shit. A lot of people do that these days. Anyway, but I want to start with, by the way, hit subscribe, hit thumbs up. Please, when you hit subscribe, make sure you click the bell icon because that's the only way YouTube will ever tell you about my stuff. And I've broken 30,000 subscribers on Rumble, which is a fairly new channel for me. I haven't been on Rumble that long, but rumble.com/LeeCamp. And I hope I'd be great to break 40 sometime soon. So help me do that. But all right. So here's a breakdown of how much of the profits the U.S. takes from various industries. And this is a Twitter thread by Arnaud Bertrand, which is an excellent thread. And so he goes through the numbers of global profits from select industries that end up in American pockets. Now, of course, he means American corporate profits, corporate pockets. These percentages do not so much end up in American, average Americans' pockets, but I'll get into that more in a moment. But this is how much ends up in Americans' pockets. This is global. So of the global aerospace and defense, so war industry, 92% goes back to America. Of the media, 81% of those profits go back to America. Pharmaceuticals, 50%. Hardware and software, 77%. Electronics, 46%. Financial services, 67%. And here are some of the charts. The charts are breathtakingly boring. But if you wanted to see that they exist, then I'll show them to you. But But that's what you want from your facts, is you want boring charts that are then saying something important. So there's the chart, and he says, in fact, the only industry where the U.S. doesn't extract the most profits, the only industry where the U.S. think about that, the only industry where the U.S. doesn't extract the most profits, meaning even when the U.S. is a lower percentage, so let's say 30 some percent, it's still the highest percentage of any country in that industry. And so he says the only industry where the U.S. doesn't extract the most profits is banking. We're second to China. And then he reminds us that the U.S. is 4% of the world's population. So as we suck up 92% of aerospace and war money, 92%, we're 4% of the world's population. 4% of the world's people, 92% of the profits. 4% of the world's people, 81% of media. 4% of the world's people, 50% of pharmaceuticals. 4% of the world's people, 77% of hardware and software. 4% of the world's people, 46% of electronics. And 4% of the world's people, financial services, 67%. So we are a tiny number of the world's population, only 4%. And yet we are, and I have never even heard these numbers really talked about. I mean, I've heard obviously of the US extracting a lot of profit, extracting a lot of resources around the world, but I've never heard these numbers put this way, which is so important and it should be talked about a lot more. But like I'm saying, this is the first I've actually, heard these all laid out. Really is just amazing. And in terms of the 4% of the world's people, I think it's also important to say, well, how much of these profits actually get to the average American? A tiny amount, right, of these profits. So when we say that, let's say aerospace and defense, aerospace and war, defense is a fucking euphemism. When we say aerospace and war, 92% of the world's profits go to America, the country. Of that, how many are going to largely the richest of the rich? What percentage? Now, I don't know that number, but it's most of it. And as many of you know, the American workers get treated worse and worse. The American rich get richer and richer. And I just thought I'd give a couple examples of that. How hard the U.S. American is struggling. Some of the latest surveys, 1 in 2 Americans say they're struggling financially. 1 in 2. Nearly 1 in 3 workers say they run out of money before payday. 1 in 3 workers in America. So you have 50% of Americans say they're struggling. You have 1 in 3 workers saying they run out before payday. I know an old statistic was that 50% of Americans said they couldn't get through a $500 to $1,000 emergency without going into debt. And the latest numbers are that 38 million Americans are below the poverty line. So I guess that would be a little over 10%, maybe 12% or something, but that includes children. So of working adults, that's a much higher percentage, but 38 million below the poverty line. So while all of this money that we were just discussing gets sucked out of the world, out of the globe to America, those profits then get parsed out and sucked mainly to the richest Americans. So really what these charts are is showing what percentage of these industries the ruling class, the elite rich class of Americans are sucking out of the world. And so he goes on to say what's even more troubling is that most industries, the share of the profits going to Americans has been growing over time, not shrinking. About 35% of the world's 500 top companies are American. Again, 4% of the world's population. But Americans own about 46% of the shares of those 500 top firms. So even for the companies that are not American, Americans still own a large percentage of the shares of those companies. By contrast, 15% of the world's top firms are Chinese, but the Chinese own only about 6% of the top 500 firms. Americans own 82% of Chinese top 50 firms, while the Chinese only own 64% of their top 50. Oh, sorry. Americans own 82% of Americans' top 50 firms, while Chinese only own 64% of their top 50. Much of the profits from Chinese exports go to Americans. Chinese exports, well, I'm going to skip over those numbers, but it's just too many numbers. Making myself dizzy. But he says, so actually, there's a very good case to be made that the rise of China has made America, or at least the American capitalist class, immensely richer and more powerful, since they're the ones who get to keep an immense share of the profits from a rising China. And that is absolutely true. And that's why America had been fine with China rising for years. America had cooperated with China's rising, had all our shit made there. Every goddamn T-shirt, toy, and tool you work with says "Made in China" on it. The reason was because it was enriching Americans, largely the richest Americans, but it was enriching Americans, and so they were fine with that until recently the American ruling class started to realize, oh shit, China is actually going to be bigger than the United States economically very soon, and we need to turn them into an enemy rather than working with them. And so now you have this great power conflict, as the U.S. government likes to call it, where we are going to fight China and Russia, put us on the brink of nuclear war, obliterating our entire planet, at least when it goes to human life. Maybe bacteria will do quite well. So, we have that. When people say, nuclear war is going to be so awful and all the humans are going to die because, the skies are going to black out and no crops will grow, be like, yeah, but I bet there'll be certain kinds of bacteria that'll be fucking loving it. Okay. So it's not all bad for everyone. But that's why there's been this shift from working with China to trying to harm China at every turn. He concludes, we always speak about inequality between rich and poor, but rarely about this. How can a country with 4% of the world's population get to extract such a disproportionate share of the planet's profits? Do we all work for Americans? And what he does not get into is what I already mentioned, which is that even as America sucks, so many, and you can put a period at the end of sucks if you like. Even as America sucks, so much of the profits, and resources as well, but profits out of the world, those profits then largely go to the richest Americans. So you have a tiny, tiny group of people extracting the profits and the resources and the life force. I mean, a lot of this is labor, right? So labor is your life force. It is if you're spending a lot of your day at a job, that is your life force. That is your life energy. So there's a tiny group of American billionaires and multi-millionaires. I don't even know what the 1% is now, but I'm sure it's multiple millions of dollars. There's a tiny group of human beings in America that are extracting the resources, the profits, and the life force out of so many humans, most of the humans around the globe. And that's what these numbers show. And it's just amazing that people still think, oh, this system is fine. This is great. All we need to do to fix this system is recycle our plastic bags and we'll be doing great. No, that's not. You have to evolve past capitalism. We have to get to a system that actually respects the environment, respects human beings, each and every human being. Doesn't matter what class you were born into, doesn't matter where you went to school, where daddy got you in at school. That doesn't matter. You have to have a system that respects the fucking the air, the streams, the trees, and each individual person, instead of one where a tiny number of individuals are able to treat this world like both a piggy bank and a toilet, and just destroy things as they suck up all the profits, the life force, the clean air, the clean water. And I think these numbers just show that brilliantly. Even for those who want to disagree with me and go, well, I like America and I like the way we live and everything. Well, just be honest with yourself. That okay, you can make that argument, but just say we Americans suck up most of the profits, resources, and life forces of everybody else around the globe, and I feel that is right. Just say that sentence. All these right wingers, all these fucking Republicans, and if you watch me for 10 seconds, I trash the Democrats equally, but all these right wingers across America, I'm not even talking about politicians right now, all these right wingers across America that want to say, fuck America, love it or leave it, fuck immigrants, da, da, da. Okay, just be honest. Just say we Americans suck up most of the resources, the profits, the clean water, the clean air, the clean lumber, and shit out a polluted world. And I think that is right. Just say that. Then we can have that discussion. Okay, you think that's right. I think that's wrong. Let's discuss that. Somebody's in the comments saying Lee is worth $1 to $5 million. That is absolutely not true. But thank you for lying about me in your fucking comment threads. I saw there's these great things. Oh my God, there's these great things on every once in a while. I'll get a Google alert that one of these celebrity find out facts about Lee Camp or how much Lee Camp is worth or whatever. And they're hilarious on multiple levels. How wrong they are, but they're clearly written by bots because it's not even, it's like broken English. It's like, and then the besides the fact that it just blatantly lies about how much money I have or I've made or whatever, it's he's a multimillionaire, all this bullshit. But on top of that, it'll just make up like small bizarre facts. Like I saw one said Lee loves to buy shoes, and every time he has extra free time, he buys shoes, and he has 100 pairs of shoes. Folks, I have 3 pairs of shoes. All right. One's a pair of boots, one's a pair of flip-flops, one's a pair of fucking running shoes. And that is it. So it's hilarious. Another one, and this is also how you can know it's a bot. I also saw one said, maybe it was the same one, said, Lee is 6'3" or something like that, which I'm not. I'm 5'10", 5'10 and a half maybe. Lee's 6'3", but he looks regular height when he's with his friends or something like that. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? But so maybe it was because of one of these bullshit pages that I then got an email from a fucking private helicopter service that said, it was like an email supposedly to my assistant. Don't have an assistant that answers my emails. It said, hey, I hear you handle Lee Camp. Would you like to get a private helicopter service for him? And I'm like, dude, how much do you think being a fucking YouTuber, a censored and banned YouTuber pays? Jesus Christ. All right. Anyway, sorry to go off on a tangent. Yeah, the private helicopters that I can afford on my $5 donations at on locals, which, by the way, folks, you should join Locals. You can go to leecamp.net, or you can click the red button on Rumble and join my Locals page so that I can increase from 3 pairs of shoes to 4 and increase my height to 6'3". I can have some surgery done to do that. All right, so let's move on to the war in Ukraine. This amazing admission by Angela Merkel. She no longer rules Germany with an iron fist. She's no longer the head of Germany, the chancellor, but former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, in an interview with the German newspaper Die Zeit, said the 2014 Minsk agreement was an attempt to give Ukraine time. They used that time to get stronger, which you can see today. Ukraine of 2014, 2015 is not Ukraine of today. Okay, now you may not realize this if you don't know much about the Minsk agreement, but many of you know that the war in Ukraine did not begin in this past February. It began in many ways in 2014 when the U.S. fostered the Maidan coup, putting in power a U.S. favorable government, and almost immediately, or maybe immediately, the Nazis that were part of the Ukrainian military, I am certain they're not all of the Ukrainian military, but there are very powerful Nazi forces. Zelensky has Nazi guards around him with insignia on their jackets. Anyway, they began attacking people in the Donbass region who considered themselves Russian. Now, there are many people in the Donbass region of Ukraine who are Russian culturally. They speak Russian. They consider themselves Russian. They have Russian passports. Often they have 2 passports, Russian and Ukrainian. They have much family in Russia. So there were attacks against them, and 14 to 15,000 people were killed in that fighting in Donbass. So the Minsk agreement was actually, I'll read, and I'm aware that Wikipedia is the fucking liberal view of things, but it's still useful at this moment. So here's what Wikipedia says the Minsk agreements were. Minsk agreements were a series of international agreements which sought to end the Donbass war fought between armed Russian separatist groups and armed Ukrainian forces. Armed forces of Ukraine with, so this is I'll skip over the fairly liberal interpretation. I mean, I don't need to skip over it. It just says with Russian regular forces playing a central part. I don't know about that, but the first known as the Minsk Protocol was drafted in 2014 by the Trilateral Contact Group of Ukraine, consisting of Ukraine, Russia, and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, with mediation by the leaders of France and Germany. Now, France and Germany at this time, and it continued up until recently, were very close economic partners with Russia, getting much of their energy from them and working with them on a variety of things, which is really how the world should work, right? Working together, So after extensive talks in Minsk, the agreement was signed September 2014 by representatives of the Trilateral Contact Group without recognition of their status by the then leaders of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic. That's the Donbass region. This agreement followed multiple previous attempts to stop fighting in the region. So then there was so the fighting did not stop, and then Minsk II was signed. Now, the Minsk agreements gave a bunch of promises to Russia that, Ukraine wouldn't become part of NATO and that arms would not be shipped into Ukraine and things like that. So it gave a lot of promises to Russia. And they were all broken, which is why Russia ultimately, and by the way, I'm opposed to the Russian invasion. I'm opposed to war of all kinds. So, I have never said, yay, go Russia, kill people. But this is a proxy war. This is U.S. versus Russia, and Russia was pushed to this point. You can believe both things. You can be opposed to the invasion, and also understand how it got pushed to this point. But anyway, so Angela Merkel admitting that the Minsk agreement, which was a lie by the West, they broke the promises, was a lie by the West, admitting that they signed that lie knowing it was a lie, meaning they knew it wasn't going to hold, but they just wanted to get Ukraine time to arm itself to fight the proxy war. This is a mind-blowing admission because it is admitting everything so many of us in independent media, those of us who have been honest with you, have been saying for, since February, which is that this is a proxy war. Ukraine is being used to fight Russia, to drain them down, to sever contacts, to turn Europe back into a vassal states underneath the United States, et cetera, et cetera. And this admission by Merkel that that's what was done is pretty incredible. Of course, it's not being talked about like that in the mainstream press. They don't seem to care that this admission is fucking mind blowing. So, this would be like the U.S. empire during the time of the Native Americans. The time when we were actively at war with the Native Americans, as opposed to just culturally at war with the Native Americans as we do now. But it would be like if in the early years of the United States, as we were signing all these treaties with Native Americans and then breaking all the treaties and then killing them and moving them to reservations and things like that, it would be as if the leaders of the American government said, yeah, we just signed those treaties to buy us time so we could find more effective ways to fight you and kill you. That's the equivalent. She's saying, yeah, we just signed those things to buy time to get ready to fight this proxy war. I mean, it really is fucking amazing. And, it's not, obviously that was covered in a fairly mainstream outlet. Her quote was, but the ramifications of her quote, what it means, is not covered by your mainstream media. Cannot be. All right, I want to get now to, by the way, please, folks, become a member and click subscribe and click thumbs up and share this and all that good stuff. And check out my interview also with Vijay Prashad, which I just completed a couple hours ago, that I'll put up at leakcamp.net as well. But okay, so I want to get to Stella Morris, Julian Assange's wife and mother of his two kids. She has just posted a letter, handwritten letter, by the man who leaked or is accused of leaking. I believe he still denies it. And I don't know the truth of whether he leaked it or not, but we'll just say the CIA and the government say he leaked it. So, who knows what to fucking believe from them. But the guy who's accused of leaking Vault 7 to WikiLeaks. Vault 7, as I mentioned earlier, was that mind-blowing leak that showed exactly what the CIA's been up to, the CIA tools, the CIA efforts. It was just, for example, it showed that the CIA could and was spying on people, including Americans, by listening through their smart TVs. Didn't have to turn the TV on. You could have a dark, sitting dormant TV in your apartment. That's a smart TV, one of the ones where you talk to it and you say, turn on TV, go to channel fucking softcore porn or whatever. And you can yell things at it. They could listen through those without turning them on. I don't know that the turning on matters, because if they're listening while it's turned on, that's still problematic, but whatever. I guess it'd be tough because you'd have to hear the game show like fucking talking while the people in the apartment are talking or the house. So yeah, you get a little noise pollution. Can you fucking tone out Drew Carey talking about The Price is Right while these people, I'm trying to listen to, but so anyway, they can listen to you through your smart TV, and they do. Now, I'm not saying they fucking listen to every American. They listen to the ones they have interest in. Although there was another leak, unconnected to this one, I think at the NSA, showing that people would listen to their like fucking girlfriends and shit at the NSA. Like they don't care. They have all the power in the world. I don't give a shit. Or read their texts or whatever. But so it revealed that. It revealed much of the CIA's tools in their arsenal. Another big one, which if our media were honest, should have played a role in the hilarious Russiagate hoax. But another one was that the CIA would hack into wherever they wanted to be, hack into another government, hack into a corporation, whatever. And they had tools that would leave footprints, they call them, or fingerprints, but of another country. So they hack in and to whatever, and in the code is left little fingerprints that tell people investigating later who did the hack. They investigate and they find little Russian letters. That was one of the main ones. I'm using Russian because that was one of the main ones they would use. So then they go, oh, it's the Russians did the hacking. Well, no, it was the CIA with a tool that left Russian letters in the hacking details, or Chinese or whatever. But that was another one of the tools they had. And so this comes out from WikiLeaks, and there was tons of other stuff, but it was just phenomenally embarrassing to the CIA, and it just made them look awful. It also showed they had backdoors into all kinds of programs and things and computers, and just made them look incompetent and stupid and criminal and all of those things. So what does the CIA do? But they grab the guy they claim did it, whether he did or not. Whether he did or not, it doesn't matter, because this is what they've done to him is criminal and disgusting. And I mean, if he did leak it, he should be a whistleblower, revealing the crimes of the CIA. But so right now he's in prison in the U.S. His name is Joshua Schultz. Actually, the New York Times called Vault 7 the largest loss of classified documents in the agency's history and a huge embarrassment for the CIA officials. After his conviction, the Department of Justice called it one of the most, after Joshua Schultz's conviction, one of the most brazen and damaging acts of espionage in American history. So he was tried and convicted. And again, whether it was him or not, it shouldn't matter. He should be a whistleblower. He should be treated like Ellsberg, who's now viewed as a hero. But here's a letter, and I got to warn you, it's hard to hear. But and I might not get every word right because it's handwritten. But he says, so he writes it, dear Judge, the judge that's overseeing his case. Beginning Monday, December 19, 2022, I'm engaging in a hunger strike for an end to this barbaric, indefinite, solitary confinement. For the past 4 years, I have been tortured in an American concentration camp, which is in no way an exaggeration. Confined to a parking space or two, meaning size, for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, speakers blasting 24/7. So clearly, I mean, that is a form of torture. So clearly they're not just imprisoning him, they're also torturing him. But imprisonment is torture, but besides that, they're torturing him. Bright, interminable lights 24/7, starvation from skipped meals and reduced food, no access to normal leisure activities afforded every day to death row inmates in the Western Hemisphere, no library, no access to books, no access to television, no access to radio, limited to no phone minutes, commissary, recreation, absolutely zero human contact whatsoever. We are to spend our time 24 hours each day, every day, sitting in our torture cages, twiddling our thumbs. It is maddening. It is unimaginable pain and suffering. It is immoral, despicable, and downright evil and inhumane. No human being is meant to live his entire life in a steel cage and concrete box the size of a parking space with no outside contact. There are laws against this treatment if it were a dog or an animal. But when the United States imposes this torture on a man, then it's called justice. He then gets into some literary references, but I don't want to, just read for too long. But you can find this on Stella Morris's Twitter account. It's at Stella_Assange. He says the deprivation of meaningful social contact and positive environmental situation characteristic of solitary confinement subjects prisoners to grave psychological and physiological harms. And of course he's right. It's straight up torture to be concealed in a cell. He says, I want to die. I can actually feel myself losing my mind through this torture. I have not known an atom's worth of joy or happiness, but my abject pain and suffering. Truly, the torture is worse than any torment of the body. I would gladly switch places with a Jew in Auschwitz in 1942. At least they were allowed to die. I would be the first in the gas chamber. And again, this is, not easy to hear. And enthusiastically put my mouth on the nozzle. I would voluntarily take the suffering and painful death over the interminable torture and painful life in solitary confinement. Some things are for far worse than death. I want to die. And, it's weird to hear a reference to Auschwitz like that, but I think he was just speaking quite literally that, in a concentration camp in the 1940s, he could have killed himself, whereas now he doesn't have the ability to kill himself in this cage. And I mean, Jesus Christ, this is the country we're supposed to be proud of. This is the country we're supposed to wave the flag for. This is the country we're supposed to say, hey, we're better than other countries. We don't treat people like that. And again, even if he did it, even if he was the leaker, and even if you and I were to agree, which I don't, but let's for devil's advocate or sake of argument, let's say, I agree, it never should have been leaked. This is still fucking wrong. It's still torture, which we say we don't do, right? It's against the Geneva Convention. Yes, we did break the Geneva Convention, and we have tortured many people. However, it's still against the Geneva Convention. It's still an international crime. And here we are torturing this man for leaking the crimes of the CIA. If he did it. But whether he did or didn't do it is immaterial. This is just totally despicable that, this is a country that anyone claims to be proud of. I mean, you can't have this type of shit going on in our country and say, I'm proud of the United States and I'm going to criticize other countries for their human rights. This is the most heinous, revolting way to treat a human being. And another reason that Stella Morris put this letter out there, other than raise attention for Joshua Schultz, is that this is how Assange would be treated if he were extradited to the United States, which he continues to fight extradition now. And he has basically been treated this way in Belmarsh in London. But I think he has some slight, benefits to being there as opposed to in the U.S. But this is how he'd be treated. And it absolutely is torture, 100%. So, keep fighting for that man to not be tortured. Keep fighting for Julian Assange. And keep fighting for a country that we could actually one day be proud of. Because you can't fucking be proud of that shit. All right? I don't care who you are. I don't care how fucking bleed red, white, and blue. All right, yeah. Doesn't matter. Can't be proud of that shit. I'll tell you that right now. So, honestly, it's the most criminal, and that's supposed to be called justice. It's like, that's not some backwoods fucking, dirty cop that imprisoned him. That's our justice system. That's our system saying this is how it works here. All right. The rest of this live stream is going to be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. If you aren't there already, head on over to rumble.com/Lee Camp. You can become a member of leecamp.net by clicking the red locals button up at the top there at rumble.com/leecamp. I have more stories coming for you right now. I'm also going to show you the new episode of the Most Censored News about the Pentagon failing their 5th ever audit, and they just failed for the 5th time. And I have a lot of new details that you've got to see in that episode. So yeah, don't miss that. Come on over to rumble.com/leecamp, and I will see you there. Give me 2 seconds. Chat amongst yourselves. Here's something to chat about. Did you know that if you took your lungs out, if you removed your lungs and laid them flat, they would be the size